Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm going to shift to a PowerPoint presentation in a few minutes, but I'd just like to talk to you for a minute. I really appreciate you being here today and also looking at how we develop the question. I think it's very important from us on the presidential team to think about the profession and how from an ambassadorial role we're going to move forward. So today I'd like to take you on a little bit of a journey. It's a short journey. It's going to last approximately 15 minutes, but I just want you to give some thought to some of the things I'm going to say, and I'll be happy to entertain questions as we move forward. So I'm going to share my screen, and if everything works properly, which I believe it will. Okay, and Dimple, if it's not working properly, please say something, but I think I have my proper screen in front of you at this point. Okay, so we're looking at enhancing the profession, but I would like to talk about enhancing the profession from a global perspective. There was someone much wiser than me, and probably long before I was born, which was a while ago, once said that the sun never sets on the British flag. And I would like to take that statement and say the sun never sets on IOSH. And if you look at the map of the world, and if you look at the green that's on the map of the world right now, these are countries where we have members of IOSH today. So we cover more than half of over 200 countries that are listed in the UN system. Unfortunately, some of the countries we can't even see on here in some of the areas and territories because it's just not practical on a map. So we have members in a variety of different countries all over the place. But I'd like you to, as part of this journey, I'd like you to think about something just for a few minutes. As was said in the introduction, as Melissa had said, I worked for 23 years in the United Nations system. And during that period of time, I was fortunate to be posted in Bangkok, Thailand. And I was responsible for safety and health in basically all the countries of Asia and the Pacific. And I had an opportunity at that point in time to also work, working on my doctorate on my own time in the region. I had a possibility to work with the Gypsies of Thailand. These were approximately 400 indigenous fishermen divers using very primitive diving equipment, and many of them, unfortunately, huge numbers dying of decompression sickness or air embolism as a result of their work. Now, if you think about what I've just told you, the indigenous fishermen divers of Thailand, they do not have safety and health professionals working with them. They have in their villages, primitive villages on the edge of the sea, they have public health workers. And the public health workers became, if you like, for me, my agent provocateur, the individual that could basically instill in people a message for safety and health. Why am I sharing this with you? Because every place we go in the world, safety and health is a little bit different. And one thing that's wonderful about IOSH is we are no longer, as an institution, UK-centric. We have a global perspective. And this global perspective is absolutely fantastic because we're able to see some of the problems that other people have seen. We're able to share perhaps a solution that develops in Australia is something we can apply in the Caribbean, and something that develops, for example, in Brazil is something we may be able to apply in China. And we're able to look at best practices. We're looking at how the profession develops. We're looking at how we move forward. So I want you to keep in mind this global perspective, and also the fact that we may not, I have a degree in occupational safety and health engineering, my PhD, but not all of us are safety and health engineers. Some of us have a technical perspective. Some of us have an environmental perspective. Some of us have a hygiene perspective. Some of us have an educational perspective. There are different ways that we contribute to the profession. And the profession is growing, or the professions. We have multidisciplinarity in our professions. And these professions are indeed growing. And we need to think about that a little bit. So part of the slide that Neil showed you yesterday looks at the profession of the occupational safety and health professional. And think to my Indigenous fishermen divers and think about the public health workers that were working with them to try to change their behaviors as far as diving is concerned. And think if you were all of a sudden parachuted into the situation on a small island off the coast of Thailand. You need to have the knowledge, but you need to be flexible to be able to work with people whose mother tongue is not necessarily English. You need to be able to be innovative and agile because the rules that you learned about perhaps from the health and safety executive or from another agency are not necessarily the same. You need to figure out a way to bring things down to the level of the worker where you can simplify things, you can be innovative, you can be efficient. You need to understand how different cultures and practices and some of the legislative bodies have put things forward. And you need to be strategic, and you need to be able to build competencies of individuals, and you need to be a solution-oriented individual. You need to grasp the opportunities to be able to work with people in a powerful and a positive and an effective way. And my belief is, as a vice president of IOSH, that we are moving solidly in that direction to be able to do exactly that. But we can't be a horse with, I think the British expression is blinkers. We cannot be a horse with blinkers on. We need to be able to scan the horizon. We need to be able to look at what the professional is going to need. Again, not just in the UK or not just in Scotland or Wales, not just in Ireland, but globally. And how can we build it? How can we make sure that our members in Hong Kong or the Middle East or Caribbean or Africa, how can all of these people have a menu to choose from that becomes a powerful menu? And as you know, there has been leadership that's been put forward by our institution, looking at the profession, looking at trying to future-proof the profession, and trying to understand through leadership that we have things like continuing professional development, we have IOSH Blueprint, we have the Business Leaders Forum, but we also have different educational parameters that we look at to come into the grades of IOSH, starting at affiliate, working up through associate, looking at this concept of tech IOSH, moving into grad IOSH, and eventually into chartered member and chartered fellow. It's an interesting journey. Yesterday, we heard a lot about mentoring. We heard it first from Neil, and then we heard from the second speaker, I believe it was Alan, and the importance that we can do what we can do as volunteers to strengthen this mentoring capacity. But one of the things that I am looking at personally, and one of the things I believe very, very strongly about is how do we develop the competencies, the knowledge, skills, and experience that we need for this multidisciplinary institution, multidisciplinary profession. We need to be able to set a standard for skills as an institution. And we need to look at knowledge and behaviors so we can manage safety and health at work. And as safety and health professionals, we're not necessarily, up to our armpits on the shop floor. We need to actually work strategically on how we manage safety and health. And in building the new competency framework, as Neil introduced to you yesterday, there was consultations with occupational safety and health professionals, as well as educators and businesses. So we're looking at categories, we're looking at competencies, and we've done some research to look at something called a membership review. So I'm just going to take a few minutes and share with you this idea of the competency framework. If you look at the circle and you look at the top of the circle, we're looking at technical skills. And the technical skills, I think all of us are fairly comfortable with. And from a technical perspective, we know that the traditional areas of responsibility, which include safety, occupational health, occupational hygiene, fire, the environment, quality, how do we manage an incident? And incident management and resilience is something that has strongly come to light during the COVID-19 situation. How do we manage these risks? How do we have a basis of safety and health law? What is the culture that we're dealing with? How do we build a safety and health culture so it's going to be sustainable all over the long term, over the long period of time? This becomes a very important element of the competency framework, but it's only one part of the picture. As safety and health professionals and building the profession toward the future and embracing other related professions, we also need to look at some core competencies. We need to be able to plan and build strategies and demonstrate leadership and management in an effective yet a powerful way. But we also know many of us have worked in the area of behavioral safety. And when we're dealing with behavioral safety, we need to do a few other things. We need to figure out, how do we work well with others? How do we go back into the technical area and push this area of a safety and health culture that is broad and embracing? How do we work with medical doctors, industrial hygienists, safety and health educators, and all the other professions that are related to occupational safety and health? I can't name all of them. How do we effectively communicate, not basically just simply sending the message, but making sure the message is being received effectively? How do we measure personal performance? How do we set up these things called leading and lagging indicators, KPIs, okay? And how do we manage the stakeholders involved? So these are some of the challenges that we need to be looking at, and the new competency framework is starting to address. I'm very pleased that following my brief introduction today, we're going to have a couple of other colleagues. Laura Aucott is going to be talking about personal branding for the safety and health professional that fits very much into the competency framework. And after that, something that we've been all learning about during the COVID-19 pandemic is resilience, and professional resilience is going to be addressed by Sarah Jones. So I think you're in for an interesting day today. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to be able to respond to them, or feel free to send me an email, and anything I can do to help you, anything the presidential team can do to help you as ambassadors of safety and health, we would be most happy to do that. So on that note, I'm going to stop my screen share and turn it back to, I guess I'm going to turn it back to Melissa, and wish you an excellent day, an excellent seminar. I think you're in for an exciting bit of information that you can not only internalize, but also share with others. Melissa, back to you.
Thanks so much, David. I think, as you shared, this being part of a global community like IOSH is so important, especially as the world gets so much smaller. So I'm actually going to hand over to Roger, who will help facilitate a Q&A portion of this session.
Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome along to this morning's seminar. I'm going to be going through the question and answers. You can do it two ways. One is to either write them down in the chat boxes. If you are, can you please start it with a Q so that when I spot it, I can see it's there. And then at a suitable moment, we're going to be putting those in. We'll put those into them, but also you should be able to raise your hand if you've got a question that you'd like to ask yourself. You will need to be on camera when you're asking it. Otherwise, I think we're there. If anyone would like any questions immediately, please fire away, and then we'll pick them up. We haven't had any questions so far, so there you go.
let me stir the pot a little bit, Roger, if you don't mind. Let me just ask the question, as a safety and health professional, do you feel that you are a global person, or do you feel that you are a local person, or do you feel you're a local person contributing to a global world? And how do you see us as part of an overall team, as an institution, a membership and a professional institution of occupational safety and health? Were you able to hear me, Roger?
Sorry, was that a question to me, or was that, sorry, I was assuming that was a general question to everybody else.
That is to everybody else. I just want to make sure I didn't know anybody heard it or not.
I could hear you. I could hear you perfectly.
Okay.
From personally, it's from my point of view, but it's mainly because I'm not dealing much with international. My role, I chair the Midland branch, but I see myself as a UK health and safety professional, partly because within IOSH, I'm dealing with all the various branches and people, but also in my role, I'm working from one end of the country to the other and coming across different industries that work locally, but also with safety professionals from all those areas. So predominantly, I'm UK. Oh, we have a question. Here we go. This one is from Alan Plum of Chiltern branch, which is saying, David's presentation is certainly thought-provoking. What efforts IOSH, I wonder what efforts IOSH are making to engage with other professional bodies. We have to realise that the world doesn't revolve around IOSH. Many of us are involved with other organisations. My parent is relatively small, but always plays a major part in promoting occupational health and safety. I've been a member of the Institute of Agricultural Engineers and involved in health and safety, mostly as a regulator in all of my 40-year career, but an IOSH member only for 10 years. So to recap that one, what efforts are IOSH making to engage with other professional bodies?
Okay, thank you. It's a very good question, Alan, and I appreciate that. And I think what you just shared with us in a matter of a minute in the chat box, I reflect and sort of think, well, I have, and that you've heard my CV, I don't need to go through it again, but at the same time, you've heard that I'm involved with fire safety. You've also heard I'm involved in diving safety, and I'm a member of several other institutions. Before I got involved with IOSH, I was a member of the American Society of Safety Engineers, which became the American Society of Safety Professionals. I think you can tell by my accent that I'm not English by origin. But the administration of IOSH, the IOSH team, if I may, as well as members of the presidential team, and from time to time members of council, through different types of meetings, we are reaching out. We are trying to reach out and build, as part of IOSH's vision, we're trying to build links to other institutions around the world, especially like-minded institutions. And there are times, for example, I had a discussion just 2 days ago as a member of the presidential team, with an idea that, how can we strengthen what a country like Malaysia is doing? How can we strengthen other countries of the world? How can we work in the Caribbean, for example? Because there are areas that have certain levels of development, but there are areas that are not quite as developed. And we have to be very careful that we're not pedantic. We have to be very careful that we're saying there's only one way to do things. Because I think when we're working in the developing world, we find that there are phenomenal ways that they're doing things in safety and health that we have to learn from. So the more we can reach out to, well, let's say other like-minded organizations, such as ASSP, such as the Institution of Agricultural Engineers that we're talking about, such as the Institution of Fire Engineers, that's fantastic. The more we can reach out also to government institutions in the different countries that we're talking about, or intergovernmental institutions. And I know IOSH is also working with a number of agencies, international agencies, such as the World Health Organization, the International Labor Office, the United Nations Environmental Program, and other agencies that can make that happen. Alan, if I have not answered your question, please come back to me in the chat or by email, and I'd be happy to further the discussion with you.
All right. Thank you for that one. We have another question from Tim Birkin, which is saying, from a global perspective, how do we connect with IOSH members in other countries if we move countries? So if you go from one country to another, how do you make connections there? Tim has recently moved to Sweden and can't find any branches or members.
Okay, Tim, I think one of the key areas to think about there is to actually exercise the professional services that IOSH provides and go through the membership group. Now, they cannot necessarily give you an email address, but they can reach out to other members in your country. And there are different networks that have been forming. For example, I'm a member of in Switzerland, we don't have an IOSH branch, but we have a network of about 49 safety and health professionals in bordering countries where we get together for educational programs. And I think the membership team are in a key position to be able to help us with that. And I'm also happy to see if I can intervene, if I can help in some way. It's a very good question. Thank you.
We have another question now from Melissa Maynard. From a global perspective, how can we connect with global members in our same sectors? Melissa works in heritage, learning and visitor engagement. It would be great to connect.
Okay. As you know, we have branches which are geographic by nature, but we also have groups. And for 6 years, I served as a member of the IOSH Fire Risk Management Group. There are other groups, for example, I know there's a waste management group, there's a construction group, there's different groups that are the sectoral groups. And again, by reaching out through membership, you can join a group. And if you're so motivated, you can also consider applying to be a member of a committee of that group. And once you're in that group, and you can join multiple groups, there's no additional charge anymore to join multiple groups. So if you are in a group, you can communicate with that group committee, or you communicate with other members of the group, and they will give you a like-minded perspective. And as the groups grow, as the groups form and grow, they become a very powerful tool where you have sort of sectoral thinking or sectoral activities. The issue of fire safety is a very, very good example, because you have fire prevention, you have fire protection, you have educational efforts, you have engineering efforts. So how do you make these things work? And to be able to share with other people that are involved in fire safety becomes a very, very powerful tool to be able to work with from the IOSH perspective.
Okay, so there aren't any other questions that have come up at the moment. So I think we're slightly sort of on time now, I think, ready to hand over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time today, everybody.